Mangwanani Mwalelepo Vukenjani Klekwas Dumelava Nave Africa. Welcome to Africa Good Morning, the news and current affairs show that remains your portal into Africa's most potent stories. Later in the show, we will be joined by Rorisang Mogojwe, our correspondent in Botswana, as she delivers the Botswana report from Gaborone. But prior to that, these are some of the stories we'll be looking at. Johannesburg water crisis fuels voter anger as wealthier residents go off-grid. Staying with South Africa, the country's jobless rate climbs to 33.6% in second quarter. EU confirms small expert mission for Nigeria's 2027 election. And Hakainde Hichilema wraps 127 rally campaign as thousands of students also show support. We'll also be having another look at the election recap by Mr. Mike Sichula, our correspondent in Zambia. And this is ahead of tomorrow's election. It's going to be a full breakdown of what is precisely transpiring in Zambia's political atmosphere. My name is Ashwin Bedi. Top stories shortly.
Namibia is a land of movement, with waves that never stop reaching forward. Here, adventure is not something we search for. It is something we are born into. In every corner of this country, creativity rises. From artists, from athletes, from dreamers. And when the world comes to explore Namibia, they discover something extraordinary. Because when sport moves people, creativity moves ideas, and tourism moves the world toward us. Something powerful happens. A platform where movement meets imagination, where industries connect, where opportunity grows, where Namibia's next chapter begins. Welcome to the Creative Sport Tourism Expo. Exhibit, partner, experience. Creative sport tourism.
Getting into our top stories, Johannesburg's worsening water crisis and shortages are fueling voter anger as South Africa approaches local elections expected by November. The city loses more than a third of its supply, an estimated 655 million litres daily through burst pipes. In Hillbrow, Tandani Masango spent 3 hours searching for water after his block endured more than 3 years without it. Johannesburg Water Senior Manager Zakele Kuzwayo acknowledged that much infrastructure is over 50 years old. University of Wits Craig Sheridan said maintenance has suffered across public infrastructure. Climate change is also increasing water loss through evaporation, while Johannesburg faces a budgetary crisis after National Treasury withheld funding in July. Former ANC member Lindiwe Dlovu said residents are tired of persistent problems, while Kuzwayo admitted the utility is overwhelmed. Wealthier residents are increasingly drilling boreholes. Albertus Lombard of the Borehole Water Association estimates 10,000 have been drilled across Gauteng over a decade. Litigation lawyer Tia Killian spent 100,000 rand on a borehole, for example. Now, South Africa's official unemployment rate has risen to 33.6%, and this is in the second quarter of 2026, rising from 32.7% during the first quarter, according to data released by Statistics South Africa this week. The number of unemployed people increased to 8.481 million between April and June, compared to 8.137 million between January and March. The country's official jobless rate has remained above 30% for more than 5 years and ranks among the highest globally. Employment losses were widespread during the second quarter, with 7 of the 10 sectors monitored by Stats SA recording declines. Community and social services suffered the largest reduction in jobs, followed by mining, agriculture and manufacturing. Trade, construction and finance were the sectors that registered employment increases during the period. Under the expanded definition of unemployment, the rate edged higher to 43.8% in the second quarter from 43.7% previously. Young people and black women continue to be the groups most affected by unemployment. South Africa's coalition government, formed in 2024, has struggled to increase job creation despite economic reforms and some modicum of modest growth. Now, the European Union has said that they will observe Nigeria's 2027 general election, rejecting reports that they declined an invitation from the Independent National Electoral Commission. INEC formally invited the EU on April 17 this year, and the bloc accepted on July 28, informing the Commission it would deploy an electoral expert mission of 2 to 4 independent experts instead of a full election observation mission. The EU rejected claims that insecurity or hostility following its critical 2023 assessment drove the smaller deployment, calling those explanations speculation. Its 2023 mission involved 110 accredited observers and produced 23 recommendations, 6 identified as priorities, after concluding the election exposed enduring systemic weaknesses. The 2027 experts will be accredited by INEC, assess the process against international, regional and national obligations, and prepare recommendations for improving Nigeria's electoral framework. In October 2025, Barry Andrews led an EU election follow-up mission that found progress but said further action was needed. The smaller mission does not affect the EU's support to democratic governance in Nigeria program, whose second phase carries €39 million in funding for democratic institutions. And now, from one election to another we go. President Hakainde Hichilema has completed a nationwide campaign tour across 116 districts of Zambia, addressing 127 public rallies since launching his re-election campaign on 28 June. State House said the tour began outside National Hero Stadium in Lusaka, covered all 10 provinces and concluded its final leg in Luapula on 9 August. More than 50,000 students from over 50 universities and colleges marched to State House on Monday in support of Hichilema ahead of Thursday's general election. Students came from institutions including the University of Zambia, Levi Mwanawasa Medical University, Chalimbana University, and the National Institute of Public Administration. Hichilema told them his administration had restructured the economy, debt, mining, energy, education, and agriculture, while acknowledging more work remained. He pledged structured internships for second and third year students, expanded student loans to private colleges and universities, continued meal allowances, more bursaries, hostel space, and sanitation facilities. Now, here is that breakdown of the Zambia election by our correspondent Mike Sichula, who is in Lusaka.
Thank you very much for having me. Yes, indeed, the Zambian people will be going to the polls on the 13th of August to elect a new president or give President Hakainde Hichilema another 5 years to rule Zambia. A brief background to this election. President Hakainde Hichilema is coming up against 12 presidential candidates. Initially, there were supposed to be 13 presidential candidates challenging the incumbent, Mr. Hakainde Hichilema. But one of the presidential candidates, Mr. Xavier Chungu, has since withdrawn from the race because he was arrested by the Zambia police in connection with seditious practices and other offenses that the Zambia police have slapped on him. Then the 2026 elections are going to see 8.7 million Zambians elect 226 members of parliament, which is a jump from 156 members of parliament because the constitution was amended. Then there will also be 40 proportional representative of members of parliament, and from these 40 there will be 20 women, then 15 youths, and 5 seats have been reserved for persons with disabilities. In terms of the campaign promises, the incumbent President Hakainde Hichilema is promising a continuity of the policies that his administration has been implementing in the last 5 years. And these include the provision of free education, which has seen close to over 2 million children going back to school because the government has subsidized the provision of education, and on top of that, the government is providing free meals. Then some of the new promises that the current administration is making include increased maize production, investing in alternative sources of energy, as well as economic transformation. That is what the current administration is promising. On the other hand, from the 12 presidential candidates, Mr. Brian Mundubire of the NRPUP has emerged to be a front runner as an opposition leader, and he has so far been to 9 provinces. He has held more than 60 rallies along the way. What is he promising? He is promising to come and repeal what he calls suppressive laws, and this includes the implementation of cybersecurity laws, which according to him and his running mate, Mr. Makebi Zuru, he says the implementation of the cybersecurity laws have suppressed Zambians because Zambians cannot freely speak. On the agriculture sector, Mr. Mundubire is promising increased fertilizer or agriculture inputs to farmers. He's also promising that civil servants who are working in government is going to reintroduce a debt swap, because according to him, he believes a number of government workers are in debt and they need to be supported by government so that they can come out of debt. He's also promising to continue with some of the promises that the current administration is doing, and these include the provision of free education, the social cash transfer, cash for work, and also ensure that violent political cadres are not allowed in bus stops, markets, and many other places. So, in terms of the biggest challenge to Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, Mr. Brian Mundubire is biggest opposition, and Mr. Hakainde Hichilema has actually acknowledged that the opposition from Mr. Mundubire is something that is good for democracy. Then something that is also interesting is that Mr. Hakainde Hichilema, who is the incumbent, has so far been to almost all the 10 provinces of Zambia, and because of his strategy, he has been able to hold about 5 political rallies in a day, which is something that he never did when he was in opposition. Of course, this is because there were restrictions here and there, but now that he's an incumbent, there is no restriction, and he's been able to hold these rallies. Then from the 12 presidential candidates, there are very few that are holding rallies. Others are not really holding rallies. They're just doing radio shows, and I think it is working for them in terms of how their political strategy. Then lastly, when Mr. Mundubire spoke to the BBC, a number of Zambians were happy with his presentation, whilst others thought he didn't do a good job. Of course, these were comparing with how President Hakainde Hichilema delivered the same interview when he was hosted by the BBC. But other Zambians are saying Mr. Mundubire did a good job and he deserves to be given a mandate to govern Zambia. So the Zambian people have an opportunity
We're going to dive straight into the Botswana report with Rorisang Mogojwe. In the first story, some citizens of Botswana are reportedly missing after traveling abroad seeking employment.
According to the Botswana Police Service, 8 other people were intercepted before reaching their destinations, while 2 victims were later rescued with the assistance of foreign authorities, which adds to increasing concerns of the number of people going missing after they reported to go abroad looking for greener pastures or better job opportunities abroad. And so those affected, according to police, are aged between 19 and 48 years, and with families in different parts of the country reporting that relatives have been missing for months after losing contact with them. Police are saying that some of the victims were allegedly recruited with promises of lucrative jobs and attractive employment packages, and this has since raised fears that the schemes could be linked to human trafficking, labor exploitation, as well as organized crimes. The police spokesperson, Assistant Commissioner Nieba Gali, warned that job seekers should exercise caution when responding to some of these overseas employment opportunities, particularly those that are offering unusually high salaries or fully funded travel. Basically, if anything looks too good to be true, it usually is. And so he has urged prospective job seekers to verify these recruitment agencies with the relevant authorities before actually accepting any employment offers or handing over personal documents and money. Police are also warning against relying on unverified recruiters or employment advertisements circulated through social media and other informal channels. And that's because authorities are of the belief that these high promises of high-paying jobs with few requirements should actually be treated as potential warning signs, particularly where recruiters are unwilling or unable to provide verifiable information about the employer or the destination country. And so members of the public have since been urged or encouraged to, those at least who have any information about missing persons that are linked to overseas recruitment schemes to come forward as investigations continue, because now the number seems to be rising as more and more Botswana leave the country in search of job opportunities abroad.
Now, heading into the next story, Rorisang, the government is closing 2 FMD, that's foot and mouth disease outbreaks, as they target trade recovery.
The Minister of Lands and Agriculture, Dr. Edwin Dikolotti, told Parliament that the World Organization for Animal Health has formally closed the outbreaks that have been recorded in Zone 3, Maitengwe, and Zone 6B. Now, these outbreaks were brought under control following emergency vaccination and other disease containment measures implemented by veterinary authorities. And Botswana has recorded 4 foot and mouth disease outbreaks this year, with active infections now concentrated in parts of the southern region. And so the minister was saying that government is now preparing a dossier to apply for FMD free with vaccination status for the areas where outbreaks have been successfully contained. Now, this status would be significant for Botswana's livestock industry, as international markets impose strict requirements on countries seeking to export beef and other livestock products. As we have reported here before, that Botswana lost its FMD free status with the European Union market, which is its largest export market for the beef sector. And so now government is also working to strengthen the country's disease containment system, with a 400-kilometer containment fence expected to be complete by the end of August. These are some of the measures that government is employing in order to, revive the beef industry in Botswana, as well as to get back into exporting beef to international markets. And so the Minister Dikolotti, says that once the containment zone has been certified by the World Organization for Animal Health, disease-free areas outside the zone could potentially resume international beef trade. And so the government continues to pursue repairs to existing veterinary fences on top of everything else, and also exploring some vaccine partnerships as part of efforts to strengthen Botswana's ability to respond to future outbreaks. And authorities, as we understand, are now working on a brand Botswana beef strategy, which is aimed at strengthening the country's position in international markets and also supporting the recovery of the livestock sector. The closure of the two outbreaks is therefore being viewed as an important step towards restoring confidence in Botswana's beef exports and protecting one of the country's key agricultural industries.
All right, just before Rorisang gets into her last story, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye to the viewers on DSTV 285, GOTV 25, oneup2.com, Network Media Hub, and NTVAFRIKA.MY.NA. Tomorrow, we will be joined by Mr. Ari Hochad as he delivers the South Africa report. And as always, we will be bringing you the potent stories from the African continent. Now, in the last of your stories, Rorisang, Botswana have spent about 850 million pula on illegal gambling.
The figure from the Gambling Authority of Botswana highlights the growing scale of Botswana's underground online betting market and also raises concern over lost tax revenue, consumer protection, and access to gambling by people below the legal age of 21. Now, the Gambling Authority's Chief Executive Officer, Murunzi Morales, says that offshore betting platforms are now increasingly targeting young people, with some operators allegedly running without effective age verification systems. Under Botswana's current gambling laws, the legal age for gambling is 21. However, online platforms operating outside the country's regulatory framework are not subject to the same licensing and compliance requirements as locally regulated operators. So this means essentially that money wagered through these platforms does not generate the same tax revenue for Botswana, while the operators also do not contribute directly to local employment or the wider gambling industry. Now, the scale of the online market is now drawing attention as Parliament considers the Gambling Amendment Bill of 2026. And this proposed legislation, Ashwin, seeks, amongst other changes, to lower the legal gambling age from 21 to 18. And supporters of this proposal argue that aligning the gambling age with the legal age of majority would bring Botswana's gambling laws in line with other age-based legal rights. However, critics have raised concerns that lowering the threshold could actually expose more young people to gambling, particularly as online betting becomes increasingly accessible through mobile phones and digital platforms. And so the Gambling Authority says that the growth of illegal online betting goes beyond a question of regulation, and it describes it as a significant economic leakage for the country. So authorities are now facing a catch-22 situation where they are facing the challenge of balancing efforts to regulate and generate revenue from the gambling industry with the need to protect consumers, particularly young people, from the potential risks that are associated with online betting.